All right. Hey, gang. Hope you guys are all enjoying the start of your virtual days, these next 3 days where we're not here in person with you guys, but you guys are still kind of taking care of some work just here and there. But hopefully these are restful days. It's nice and sunny out. And so I want to just take some time and recap what we're going to be doing for our 3 days. So all of the assignments should have gone live all at the same time. There are 3 things I need from you. One is this video. I need you to watch this video and make sure you have notes on all of the slides that I'm going to post on it, because all of this stuff is fair game for our test this coming Friday, and I don't want you to miss any of that. So make sure you have all of the notes from these slides, because again, this stuff is on your study guide and you don't yet have all of it in your notes. The second thing is the reading assignment. I'm going to ask you to read sections 7.7 and 7.8 of your textbook, and you guys are going to be answering a few questions concerned with that. It shouldn't take you terribly long. The textbook section is only about 11 pages between the 2 sections, and then you guys are going to answer just 3 or 4 questions concerning that content. You'll post that to Google Classroom. And the last thing is just a quick 11-question quiz, all multiple choice. It's a practice quiz for you guys. So again, it is open note, though I do recommend that you guys take some time and try that out without using your notes first as good practice for this upcoming test. You should go back through and make sure that you double check your answers against your notebook and what you have in there, because I am going to be grading that for accuracy. So hopefully all of that makes sense. All of that should be posted to Google Classroom, and everything is due Wednesday night at 11:59. I'm going to close submissions at that time, so any work that's turned in after that point, you'll have to come and see me about it. But please make sure you turn this stuff in on time. You should have more than enough time to take care of all of this. Cool. So the rest of this video, I'm just going to be walking through our notes on the Holocaust and the end of World War II and just kind of some of the outcomes of it. Again, you're going to be reading a little bit about this, but I'm going to put the slides on the screen behind me, and I'm going to make sure we cover all of this stuff. And I think this discussion really does us well to talk about it in class as well. So if you do have any questions about this, even after the video, or even if you have a statement or a couple things that think they would be beneficial to talk about in class, let's do that. This is an important topic and obviously something that doesn't go away. The Holocaust is not the only time a widespread genocide has happened. There are still genocides going on today, and genocides that happened long before the Holocaust. It's just that this one kind of opens the door for us to talk about something very uncomfortable. And it's the human tendency to take hatred to an extreme, right? And the Holocaust is not only recent, but one of the most severe cases of this type of action happening in all of human history. And again, it happened in the course of some people's lifetimes who are still alive today. And that's why we talk about it and emphasize it so much. I think it's important to do that. And again, it's not just a conversation where we talk about what happened in Germany in 1940 something. We're talking about things that are happening currently and tendencies that we have. Because I think the worst thing we could do from having a conversation like this is to point the finger and say, man, those people were terrible. Because yes, they were. And yet, if we aren't recognizing our ability, our tendency to be awful, our capability and our capacity to do great evil, then we miss the point, right? If we are to learn from history and its mistakes, then we have to understand that the terrible actions of other people are things that we're capable of too. And we're actually more capable of bad things if we assume we'll never be that bad. We'll never do that thing, right? That actually makes us more susceptible to do wrong because we're not taking conscious steps against it. So again, German anti-Semitism started early on. This isn't something that just happened when Germany's back was up against the wall. This is something that happened at the start of the war. And again, Hitler was blaming the woes of the German people on the Jews. And this type of extremism is easy to fall into because that was an enticing thing for people to believe, that people that didn't look, act, and sound like them were responsible for the economic hardships, the deterioration of great art, and even just the failure in World War I of Germany as a whole was blamed on the Jewish people. And so Germans took to this, not because they all wanted to hate on Jewish people, some did, but mostly because people were vulnerable and they were willing to accept any type of narrative that would, number one, vindicate them from any wrongdoing, but would also, number two, offer a solution. Not a good one, actually an awful one, but a solution to any of the issues that they were going through. And so at the Nuremberg trial, or excuse me, with the Nuremberg laws passed in the mid 1930s, in 1935, Nazism officially kind of forms, and Hitler approves of the legally sanctioned discrimination of the Jewish people. And so early on, even into the mid 30s, Germany is actually revoking citizenship from Jewish people. They're not allowing Jewish people and non-Jewish people to marry legally in Germany, and things are going to start to get more aggressive from there, right? Concentration camps begin to spark up at this time, and most of them are just concentration or work camps. Again, very similar to the internment camps for Japanese Americans in the United States. These are not good situations, but obviously not as bad as it will eventually get, right? And again, it's around this time, I think I mentioned to some of the classes that have gotten to this so far, this is around the time, early on into Hitler's reign, he starts hinting at a final solution to the Jewish problem. His work Mein Kampf, published before his rise to chancellorship, would actually hint at some kind of answer he has to what he calls a Jewish problem for the German people. And if you know what's coming next, then you know what that answer is. Because obviously the Holocaust is that final solution, that final answer, right? The final answer is nothing more than, or nothing less than genocide, right? The final solution was a systematic extermination of all Jewish people living in regions controlled by Nazi Germany. So what do we do with this? How do you respond to that answer being revealed? A lot of times, again, this is where our criticism of the German people comes in, and we go, there, at that point, why aren't we jumping off the bandwagon for this guy? Why aren't we rejecting this? And if you want my take, this is very much opinion, this is not like solid fact or anything. I think a lot of Germans at this point did want to, but it's far too late. If we're well into the 1940s, Hitler has been in control for 8 years at this point, right? There is no usurping his authority at that point. So number one, a strong and powerful fascist regime is not something you can just overthrow because now we feel like it's too late to do the overthrow part of this. But what about more of the social uprising and rejection of this? Surely at a certain point, if people knew that this was all happening, then they would rise up and reject it, right? Well, there's two things there. One, most of the concentration camps in Germany proper at that time were still just concentration camps. Now, exterminations did happen, and a lot of German people should have been aware of those exterminations happening. But again, I've told you how strongly Germany controlled media narratives, right? So unless you were seeing this firsthand, you weren't getting the accurate truth. You were getting what Germany wanted you to understand out of this. And that was, number one, that the people in those camps deserved to be in those camps. Either because simply they were Jewish, and a lot of people believed that was wrong enough, or two, Germany actually pushed propaganda to tell you that these people had done something wrong, that they were either like communists, or they had actually done some kind of sedition against the German government to make the war effort harder. And so the people of Germany were convinced that the people who died in death camps, or the people who were sent to the extermination camps outside of Germany, would have been needing of execution or deserving of it. Obviously this isn't true, but this is what's pushed. And again, I tell you, this is the danger we have when totalitarianism takes over. And government isn't just in political control, they're also in entire societal control, right? They have control over work and economy. They have control over the family, religion, and even media of the state. We have issues. And I think you can see these issues very clearly here. And again, the concentration camps that existed and the death camps that existed didn't just target Jewish people. You also see Jehovah's Witnesses, gypsies, Black people, people of different nationalities and races, homosexual men, and people with mental and physical disabilities, or even people who conscientiously objected to Germany's war effort, were all placed in these camps. And on the screen here, hopefully I move my big head out of the way long enough for you to see the picture that I have accompanying this slide. shows a bunch of different markers for the different like triangle markers and different colors that would have identified people as a certain type of dissenter or a certain type of deviant person within German society. So different colors would mark the reason for which you were specifically identified. And these markers here are ones from concentration camps, so you would be designated with one of these triangles. And if you were any of these things plus being Jewish, you would have another triangle backing it, which would be flipped on its side to look like a Star of David if both of those two things are conjoined. But these things also existed just in German society. So before these people were imprisoned, they were even required to walk around wearing these distinctive markings. And you can find plenty of pictures of people being marked this way and still walking around German cities and streets. But you can imagine even the social outcasting that happened for those people long before they were forced into an internment camp. And some of the camps, many of the camps, either end up becoming or start out as not just concentration camps, but specific death camps, concentration camps in which the people that were sent there were systematically killed. When I was in Europe, when I was traveling Europe, I went to Germany and Austria, and in Austria I got to go to Dachau, which was a concentration camp. And even at this camp, we walked around the premises, and you think, okay, well, the death camps are the ones where like the exterminations I've heard about happened. Well, by the end of the war, by Germany's eventual defeat, the final solution has taken such root that even the regular concentration camps take on death camp responsibilities. So Dachau is full to the brim with different showers and complexes like that, where they would invite, particularly a lot of the men would go at the same time. They would take them into the shower, and at a certain point, it's no longer group showers, it's no longer water coming from the vents and from the sprinklers, but it's gas. They were killed with toxic gas. So these gas chambers happen. The doors are steel, so like the prison guards would lock the doors behind the people, force them in there, and they would be killed with gas. And all of the bodies were then taken right up the stairs. We walked into this complex. The bottom was like the shower area and all that. And right up the staircase, or sometimes just right outside the room, was an incineration chamber where they had furnaces that looked like they had like gurney systems set up. You can see them in the picture there. Again, there was like a gurney system where you would just welcome the body into the incinerator and you would burn the person. They were typically dead by that point. They were always dead by that point. But regardless, if you want to know the distinction, if you want to know the reason for the distinction between the amount of people we believe died in the Holocaust and the amount of people we actually can confirm because we've found their bodies, this is the reason. You cannot identify a body if it's been cremated, right? And so the Germans destroy these people, any proof of their existence. So many missing persons from Germany, Austria, Poland, France, who were Jewish, are pronounced dead or considered dead because these methods were taken, right? And so there is such a big distinction between the people we can confirm dead and the people we believe died, and this is exactly why. And sometimes they would just execute people in order to make way for a new wave of people that were coming in. And so you might be asking, how did the Allies respond to any of this? How are the United States, Britain, the Soviets, how are we responding to any of this? And that's a good question. Your textbook will talk about that in section 7.7, but it's not all good news. We want to skip right to the part where we liberate the concentration camps. And I'd like to tell you that we made that liberation movement as soon as we knew about the concentration camps. But unfortunately, we knew about this stuff far before we did anything to officially stop it. And even what we did wasn't exactly what maybe you'd hope we would. So at the beginning of the war, the the U.S. State Department made a conscious effort to block Jewish immigration. We knew about increases in Jewish immigration from German-controlled areas, and we had our suspicions about why. We didn't exactly know why. We thought we knew, and we were proved correct on why. We believed that Germany was doing something, was promoting anti-Semitism. We knew what Hitler believed, and we thought maybe things might be getting bad for these people. Well, we were right. But we blocked Jewish immigration because we were dealing with so many issues on our own home front. Remember, this is in the throes of the most significant part of the Great Depression. In the late 30s, early 40s, the United States is going through it as well. And we decide not to divert any governmental efforts towards helping Jewish immigrants, or Jewish refugees really, get to the United States and seek shelter from the Germans. So that, I don't know what to do with. I don't know what you want to do with that. That's a hard decision. And obviously, again, there are reasons for it. And yet, it's harsh. It's hard. Maybe this is a necessary decision that our government need to make. Maybe there was a way to be far more compassionate. And maybe if we knew the depths of Germany, hopefully if we knew the depths of what was going on in Germany, maybe we would have pushed for more of an effort to make this happen. So eventually, though, in 1944, FDR established the War Refugee Board, which worked with the Red Cross to rescue Eastern European Jewish people by getting them to the United States, just getting them here. So the whole effort was placed on getting U.S. ships into European areas, to the Adriatic, or even over to France, and extraditing those Jewish immigrants out back to the United States. And a lot of those people, a lot of those families are still here today because of what happens after the war, where we try to reunite those families. Some of them go to the newly established nation of Israel. Some of them return back to Europe, but a lot of them remain in the United States. And unfortunately, again, even after this point, there's not a lot to say that's solid about how we responded. We can always look back in time and point the finger, and sometimes I say that's completely unfair. And in this part, I don't know if that's totally valid. Russia, for their part, completely ignored the Holocaust, did not really pay mind to it at all, despite being the closest to what was happening there. And the United States and Britain, we had the opportunity to use the railways going towards the concentration camps as bombing run targets. But we justified not doing so, one, because those railways were not military targets, and number two, because in order to do that, in order to bomb out the railway stations and make it impossible for new waves of Jewish people to even get to the concentration camps, in order to do that, we would have had to divert necessary resources that were going to other fronts in the war. And again, I don't think that's necessarily the answer we're looking for as to why we didn't do more, or maybe we're hoping that there is a story about us bombing a couple railways or something like that, but we didn't do it. And again, sometimes we can look too harshly on some of the logistic decisions of the past and assume that, well, they should have just done everything they could. And in this situation, I think that intuition is kind of fair, right? Maybe due to the severity of what's going on here, or maybe just because it's okay for us to be impractically compassionate about the way that we see history. I think this is a fair criticism for us as the Allied powers, to look back and go, man, if there was more we could have done to make the severity of the Holocaust at least diminished a little bit, then maybe we should have done it. Again, maybe that's not practical. Maybe somebody that is far more wise and understanding about what exact troop movements happened in World War II, why that was just a complete unreality for us. Maybe they could come in and say, oh, Mr. Brisley, you're being ridiculous. You haven't considered this, this, and this. And true, I haven't. Maybe there are a lot of things I don't know or we don't know about this. And at the same time, I think it's okay for our set point to be the more compassionate stance. That tends to be the way it is in a lot of ways in history, right? If your set point is compassion, then you're doing the right thing off the bat. And yet, we must be okay with encountering information that kind of helps us to understand more of the picture. So keep that in mind as you read the text. There are reasons why we did not involve ourselves in this more significantly, and yet there will always be and are people as World War II historians who are always pushing back against that and going, yeah, maybe there was a reason why we didn't involve ourselves, but do you really want to be making the argument that we shouldn't have done more to prevent the Holocaust? And the answer is, yeah, they have a point, right? All right. And the last thing I want to talk about is simply the establishment of the nation of Israel after the Holocaust. So how did this come to be? Where did this nation come from? Why is it situated where it's situated? I think hopefully we can answer that one. Hopefully you know why that's the case. But why did we choose that and not over other locations that maybe would have made more sense or caused less controversy? Hopefully I can at least introduce that idea to you, and if you want to learn more about this, or you do know more about this, then you can kind of combine what you learn here with other information that you have. So the Holocaust led to increased demand for an independent Jewish homeland, and even before the war, the League of Nations had been pursuing exactly this. The United States had promoted this, as well as the members of the League of Nations. They had all pursued this as early as the 1920s and even before that. But the League of Nations in 1920 began the process with the Palestine Mandate, which established that there would be two official states in the region that we know as kind of Israel, and then Syria and Jordan. And yes, like the Gaza Strip and all of that is involved in all of this territory. These regions were all designated to become one of two states that these countries promised to establish. One, an Israeli state, a nation of Israel. And two, a Palestinian state, a nation of Palestine. So the members of the League of Nations promised both of these things would happen, but obviously one of them didn't. And with the failure of the League of Nations, these nations which made a promise collectively as a part of the League actually ended up all rejecting their responsibility to at least the Palestinian state. Some will continue to recognize their promise towards the Jewish state, the Israeli state that exists today, but a lot of them maybe even kind of distance themselves from that idea as well. So this idea is proposed in the 1920s, and then it's kind of walked back a little bit. In 1948, the Jewish community in the Palestine Mandate proclaimed an independent state of Israel, and President Truman immediately recognized the sovereignty of this nation. But immediately they're going to war, right? Because this land was actually parsed off as part of Jordanian territory, after the removal of both French and English colonial forces from that area. So the Middle East was mostly controlled by French or English colonies or colonists. And once those forces are removed, Jordan claims that territory. But part of that territory was mandated for Palestine and Israel. And so when England and the United States start to establish the official nation of Israel, Jordanians despise this idea. And then when Jewish people come off of British boats and into that territory, the Jordanians, being religiously opposed to Jewish people, now want to start a war, because they see these people as not only rejecting the removal of colonization, but also being, again, against their religious practices, a religious enemy of theirs moving into territory that they think rightfully belongs to them. You see how complicated this gets immediately. And so these Jewish people who have come here seeking refuge from the Holocaust, which just happened, a lot of them being Holocaust survivors, will touch ground in the nation of Israel and immediately be in a territorial war. The United States recognizes the sovereignty of Israel and helps them financially to fight that war. And ever since, we've been a financial and military ally of Israel. They're one of our closest allies because we promised their establishment and existence, and we have this kind of military precedent of making sure that that happens by protecting them militarily as well. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense for you. So again, the Palestine Mandate creates two plans, one for the creation of an official Israeli state and one for the creation of an official Palestinian state. And the UN proposed both states with Jerusalem as an international territory. And obviously, it wouldn't take much for you to realize, or hopefully you would recognize that would not fly for either the Arab nor the Jewish community. The Arab community outright rejected this. Can you imagine the chaos that we were trying to impose here by having Jerusalem be this international zone where Muslims and Jewish people could both come and celebrate religiously? Well, if you can imagine how chaotic that is, then you know exactly why there's such controversy in the Middle East, right? This is Something that still happens today. Does Jerusalem belong to the Jewish people? Does it belong to the Arab people? Are you going to go crusades on me and say it belongs to the Church of Christ? All of these things are questions that we've tried to answer in both ancient history and recent history. And these things, so many battles and wars will be fought over because these aren't just cultural or national interests. These are religious interests. These are belief systems that we're encountering now. And all of these groups believe they have some sort of religious, divinely inspired right to this location. So that's just a little bit of that background. And the final slide I can show you here is a map which shows you kind of what all of this would have looked like. That first, in 1946, that green Palestine-looking territory, that's the Palestinian Mandate, and just a couple Jewish pockets there in the white. That's what it looked like in 1946. The UN plan of 1947 would have established both Israel and Palestine as sovereign states. And again, by the way, that Palestinian state, the United States actually never signed on to guarantee that, which is why the United States does not officially recognize any right that the Palestinians have to their own sovereign nation or state. But there are a lot of European countries that did promise that. So you can understand where the Palestinians are coming from when they say the Western world has promised us our own sovereign existence, and yet they thwart it. I can get that understanding. And yet the United States actually claims we never made that promise, which is fair because we were not a part of the League of Nations when the League promised that, and we actually never signed on to the UN agreement to have the Palestinian state exist either. Then Israeli territory expands throughout the wars from 1949 to 1967. And then by 2012, that final map shows you what Israel looks like, with that territory kind of expanding, again, because that green area off to the left of the map, or in the western part of the map, is the Gaza Strip, which, as you know, today is a battleground and is mostly Israeli occupied, with pockets of splinter organizations which exist to resist Israeli authority, or some would say, and fairly so, this is really terrorism that's going on, and these people are pushing into Israeli territory and trying to take over there as well. I am happy to have more of a conversation about this. I'm sure you might have some questions if you're still hearing me at this point. Maybe you turned off the video because you're done your notes. Fair enough. But if you are curious about some of this stuff and maybe want to ask a couple questions about how these things came to be or what's next for this territory, I'd be very interested to talk with you guys about it, because I'm sure you guys have some solid thoughts on it as well. And I'd imagine it's at least a little bit interesting. So hopefully all of this helps. This is the end of your notes for this section. You have everything you need now for your test on Friday. So if you have any more questions about this, if you're preparing in the next couple days, please reach out to me. I will be happy to help you out. And again, please make sure you take care of finishing up this video as well as the other 2 assignments. I look forward to grading all of that, taking a look at your responses to the questions that you have posed for the reading sections. And I then look forward to meeting you guys all for class on Thursday, where we'll do a Beverly review to see what you know for your test on Friday. All right, if that sounds good, then I will catch you all on Thursday. Thanks, guys.